Good afternoon, everyone. My name is B. Abel Liweli, and today probably seems to be like my final presentation for this course on Dr. Daga, food processing. And today I want to quickly look at the challenges of food security in Liberia. But before I go into the challenges of food security in Liberia, I want us to note that the issue of food security is a global concern for everyone, particularly in Liberia, because it got to do with the lives of millions of people who survive on food system. So it is very key that we take heed of the issues of food security to see how we can improve food security even in our country. But before we go a little deeper into that, I want us to quickly look at the definitions of food security. What is food security? There are a couple of definitions, a couple of meanings that have been given when it comes to the issues of food security. But according to the United Nations Committee for World Food Security, it says that food security means that all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meet their food preferences and dietary needs for an effective and healthy life. But in the context of Liberia, we are saying that uh, this definition goes just beyond a mere sustenance. It empowers communities, enhances resilience, and fosters sustainable development. At its core, food security is not merely about just filling up the stomach. It is about nurturing a prosperous society. In the context of Liberia, uh, the challenges to us to achieving food security are multifaceted and interconnected, right? So what we experience is that our nations have made substantial strides in promoting food security. There have been a lot of progress in policy put into place in order to enhance Liberia food security. But despite of all of these policies, documents, programs I have worked up over the period of time, there still exists a lot of challenges and hurdles. So we will want to look at the delicate balance between food supply, uh, distribution access, and affordability, and how is this influenced or is being influenced by different kinds of factors such as population dynamics, agroecological constraints, and the formulations of effective food policy. So what we're trying to do is that we want to explore the complex dynamics to food access and affordability. So we are going to delve into different topics. One of the presentations, we look at the geographical factors that influence food demand and supply, as well as the agroecological constraints that continue to impact agricultural productivities and resilience in our nation. Amidst these challenges, we will share light on the local advantages. We'll also talk about the local advantages that Liberia presents. We talk about the then offered glances of hope and opportunities for harnessing food security in Liberia. We'll look at the current context of current initiatives striving to address food security concerns. We'll delve into past successes and failure. We will look at those successes and failure and how they have shaped our journey to achieving food security. We also want to look at these lessons learned, and how these lessons have served as a guiding beacons for shaping future strategies and policy to build effective food security in our country. So moving further, we want to look at food policies and governance, right? We said the foundation for achieving food security in our country lies within the formulations and the implementation of effective food policies and governance structures. In Liberia, just like in many other countries, for example, uh, the assessment of existing food policies and regulations plays a crucial role in understanding the strengths and the weaknesses of approaches towards food security. So the Liberia Agricultural Sector Policies and Investment Plan is a regulatory arms of the government of Liberia that serve as a cornerstone in guiding our nation's efforts towards food security. We say this comprehensive plan developed by the Ministry of Agriculture outlines key strategies and interventions to enhance agricultural productivity, improve food availability, and strengthen the livelihood of what? Of food security. And the primary objectives of the Liberia Agricultural Sector Investment Plan LIPSI is actually to enhance agricultural productivity, improve food availability, strengthen livelihood of rural communities, promote sustainable land management, enhance market linkages, strengthen institutional capacities, and help to boost climate resistance and the disasters management. So as we analyze these existing policies, it is important and essential to evaluate how these policies impact food security. But we need to ask ourselves a couple of questions. Are they promoting sustainable agricultural practices? Are these policies promoting smallholder farmers? Do they address the nutritional needs of vulnerable populations? Are there provision for climate resilience and disasters management in the face of agroecological constraints? I guess so. I guess the policies outline all of these. But what we see is that despite of all of these existence, the existence of this comprehensive plan, there are several gaps and challenges that continue to hinder its successful executions and monitoring. These challenges include but are not limited to, for example, limited resources, limited in institutional capacity, lack of coordination among government agencies, infrastructure constraints, climate change, and environmental challenges. Furthermore, full governance encompasses not only national policy, but also regional, international, and local decision-making processes. Understanding all of these dynamics, the dynamics of power, representations of the local people, of representations of other traditional stakeholders into the process, their participation in this governance structure we say is very important to ensuring that all voices are heard, especially those of smallholder farmers and marginalized community, for example. So it is important. You cannot enhance food security in the absence of a very effective, robust food policies and governance structure. That's important. Another area we want to look at has to do with food distribution and supply chain challenges. This is another area when it comes to food security. You cannot also talk about food security without measuring food distributions and supply chain challenges. Ensuring the smooth and efficient distributions of food is critical aspect of achieving food security, not only in Liberia, but in any part of the world for that matter. So the evaluation of food distribution systems and analysis of supply chain are crucial steps in understanding how effective food reaches the hands of those who need it most. So we say the food and agriculture sector development agenda is one of those agendas that Liberia also have under the Ministry of Agriculture, and it provides a valuable insight into the strategies and priorities for enhancing food distributions and supply chain management in Liberia. So we say that in Liberia, the food distribution systems is a whole chain and it involves a variety of stages, starting from production to consumption. And some key aspects of the food distribution systems in Liberia, we could be looking at the meat production site, for example, where these produce are produced, right? Take for instance, Liberia produce rice, we produce other food crops like cassava, arrows, produce potatoes and vegetables. Um, we look at other tree crops like cocoa, coffee, and the rest of that. So when we look at the whole food distribution and supply chain, we are not only looking at those channels, but we are talking about the genesis of where these foods are produced, right? So we look at the production side, from the production side to the one to the distribution side, and eventually consequently to the consumer. So how does it look like in this country? Productions are made, and then it goes through a process of wholesale markets, it goes to retailers, and then it's been transported, and then importations of foods and etc. So there's different kinds of chain. But it's important that we understand this because you cannot easily discuss food security in the absence of this. Why is true that these channels exist? Why is true that these supply chains exist in Liberia? They are bottlenecks that affect the supply chain and disrupt the distributions of food. Factors such as poor infrastructure, for example, for local farmers, is not adequate. Inadequate storage facilities. Currently, Liberia does not have electricity. This will talk about having storage facilities to kind of carry on preservation of food. So we realize that most of the food, once it is not eating the barrages, right? The barrages on the ground is spoiled. So transportation constraints, for example, our roads are very terrible. So to even take the food from the production site to the local market and to other places, sometimes it's quite difficult. Post-harvest losses is another one. Due to the lack of sufficient equipment, infrastructures, and mechanics and equipment that will process some food, due to the lack of those infrastructures, Liberia experienced a lot of losses, post-harvest losses. A lot of infrastructures investment. There's not much investment being done into the agricultural economy. Climate and environmental factors also affect, and the market fluctuations at times also affect us greatly. So all of those kind of disrupt the supply chain, affecting the availability and the affordability of food in Liberia. The distributions and supply chain is a major area to look at. The next thing we want to look at is that we want to look at food access and affordability. As I said, this is not only limited to Liberia, but to the entire world. Liberia produces a lot of food in specific area, but there's some issues. How can we talk about food security? If we talk about food security, we have to also discuss the accessibility and affordability of food. So access to adequate nutritional food is a fundamental right. It's not a privilege. Yet many households in Liberia continue to face challenges in securing reliable access to food. It is essential that we also examine the issues of food access and affordability when we also talk about food security. Examine that for different groups of people within the population. And one group that is responsible for, when it comes to household survey, is the Liberia Household Income and Expenditure Survey, usually conducted by the Liberia Institute of Statistics and Geoinformation Services. They serve as a valuable resource to understand the dynamics of food access and affordability in Liberia. And one of the things we want to look at, one of the key factors influencing food access is income disparities among different segments of the population. Low-income households, particularly in rural areas, often struggle to afford an adequate diet due to limited financial resources by the Liberian Institute of Statistics in Information Services 2016 to 2017 statistics. That is why our local farmers, who are mostly subsistence farmers, they do not produce food on a large scale, right? So the little they produce due to the lack of capacities to properly manage the little they have. So uh, before the farming seasons come to an end, uh, the little the little resources of produce that these people get from their farms, they sell almost all for little or nothing, just to kind of meet up with other like demands, like educations, like health, clothing, shelter, and the rest of that. So before even we get to the middle of the farming season, these people have completely gone out of everything. They don't have food, they don't have money, and they begin to struggle again in order to what? To fret up. You know, I grew up in a rural side. I went through the very basis of some of these things that we are talking about, right? So uh, another thing is that geographical location plays a significant role in full access. When we talk about geographical locations, what we're talking about is that uh, I'm speaking from a context, from the Liberian context. Take for instance, in this country, if you look at the southeastern region, that is almost cut off from the rest of the country due to barren conditions, especially during this time of the rainy season. Like the northern region, like the central region, the central west region, those places are nearly cut off due to barren condition, right? So their location makes it difficult for food to be easily delivered to those barren localities. A distance that covers maybe just 3 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. It sometimes takes a week to 1 month before supply of food can reach to those places. What does that mean? Before the food reach there, the people will be hungry. Before the food reach there, the food will become exorbitantly expensive because of what business people, retailers, wholesalers goes through to deliver food to those places. So it's a problem. Furthermore, the impact of external shocks, such as natural disasters or economic crisis, can further exacerbate food access challenges. This happened to us during the, the Ebola crisis of 2014. You know, right after the Civil War, when Liberians were grappling on the process of rehabilitation and rebuilding their damaged infrastructure. I mean, people are getting a bit resilient to coping up with post-war challenges. But all of a sudden, in 2014, unexpectedly, there was a global epidemic that hit the sub-region that led to the death of over 25 to 30,000 people in a very short period of time, like 6 months. So all other economic activities, including agricultural productions, everything came to disruptions. So this kind of put the people astray. It put them out of touch. And after the crisis, after the Ebola crisis, people are again trying to put their lives back. They subsequently in 2020 were again hit with the COVID-19 pandemic. So these are emergency situations. It makes it difficult. But when we talk about food security, we also have to take a complete assessment of food access and affordability, not only for Liberians, but for all parts of the world. Because it's on the basis of this that we are able to develop an informed, make an informed decision, come up with a very adequate and realistic policy that will affect the rest of the population. So another factors we look at also when it comes to food security is the population dynamics and geographical factor, which is also very key in discussing food security. Population dynamics and geographical factors, understanding the dynamics and the geography of the populations is crucial for addressing food security challenges. What we realize is that as the size and the compositions of populations directly impact food demand, This is true. So I was doing a little bit of assessment uh, by the World Meter, right? The population of Liberia sampled from 1958 to 2003. So the World Meter says that in 2019, there was about 5,087,584 populations in Liberia. That was an increment of 2.05%, from 2019. In 2020, the percentage came up a little bit from 2.05 to 2.08. In 2020, there continued to be an incremental, growth within the population from 2.08 to 2.1, giving us a population of 5,103,416. And eventually, in 2002, our populations had climbed up to 5,418,377. So you see the taxonomy, you see the astronomical growth within the population. So what we are trying to say is that discussing the issue of food security is important to assess population dynamics and geographical factors. So the increase in populations also influence land use and agricultural practices. As the population expands, there is a greater demand for agricultural land, which is obvious, which can lead to deforestation and land degradations. That is practical here. In the past, the issues of land wasn't really much of a problem. When Liberia boasting of populations of 2 million to 3 million, there were farming lands all across the country. But we are getting to see a paradigm shift in that privilege. It's no longer happening. So the issues of land is becoming a little bit scarce. A lot of people are now moving up country to see how they can secure land for farming purposes in order to meet up with the food demands of the population, right? So the demand for land is also getting higher. And as the demand for land gets higher, it affects our forests. So people will venture on the forest. And then the next thing is that people will begin making farm to one spot over and over. That alone also helps to kind of degrade the soil. So what can we do in the midst of all of these challenges? So what we say is that there have to be something like sustainable land management practices and agricultural intensification, which are essential to secure food production, keep pace with population growth without causing environmental degradation. Another thing we can do is we look at the issue of family planning. Family planning plays a pivotal role in managing population's growth and subsequently its impact on food security. So access to family planning services empowers individuals to make informed decisions about their family size and spacing, leading to more manageable populations growth rates. While fertility rates are reduced, the pressures on food resources is eased, and households have better chances of meeting their nutritional needs. Though, if we are discussing this from a biological standpoint, of course, that debate could be quite different from what we're talking about. In actuality, the lesser the populations, the lesser the demands on the issues of food and leading us to food security. That is obvious, right? Another thing we say we should do more investment in family planning programs. And how do we do investment in family planning programs and integrate that into the reproductive health services? We say it helps to benefit population management, but it also contribute to what? To maternity and child health. So a couple of other initiatives we can do to improve food access for vulnerable populations. We talk about the issue of social safety nets, right? We say implementing social safety net programs such as cash transfer, whereby we used to have the Ministry of Gender, Women, and Children Affairs giving us money, transferring smaller monies to local farmers in order to do businesses and stuff like that. But all of these initiatives, one way or the other, have helped somehow to shape the dynamics, to kind of provide to provide access to vulnerable populations when it comes to food. Another thing is the school feeding program. Introducing school feeding programs is essential. Food, this program is staying in Liberia. The World Food Program is still distributing food. When I was coming as a child in the 1980s, right? During my school days, my elementary and junior high school days, the WFP provided full school feeding programs to us. We used to have meal at school, and that really kind of motivated us as well to go to school, right? So it served as a sort of motivations, encouraged us to go to school. But at the same time, what it was doing is that it was providing access to food without boosting food security. Another one is nutrition education. Providing nutritional education and awareness campaign targeted at vulnerable communities to provide healthy eating habits is also essential. Like here, right? Liberians are somewhat used to eating on rice. And that's one of the reasons why so much hunger striking this country. On rice. That's why we say rice is a stable food for Liberians. Almost 80% of Liberians eat on rice. And maybe mixed with other meat, fish, or chicken if they have it. But rice is primary. Cassava is considered as a second stable food, but not many people eating cassava. When you see people eating cassava, maybe either there is no rice at all, and then they turn to cassava. That's why we consider cassava as a second stable food. But we got other foods like potatoes, we got edibles, we got plantains, we got vegetables, we got all kinds of fruits and vegetables. When I was in Uganda, for example, I spent like 2 months in Uganda. The major food Ugandans eat is what? Potatoes. And when they face a potato, the potato is fixed in such a way that you will love to eat it. When I'm in Ghana, I eat plenty. So how do we diversify? How can we carry on this kind of nutritional education? That rest is not the only means of survival. There are other food that can keep you upright as equally as rice. So we'll begin to spread these kinds of awareness across the country so that people will not only rely on rice. In fact, you eat less rice, you eat mix of a vegetable, potato, edibles, and different kinds of food, that kinds of try to strike and to balance it diet. But in the absence of this education, we're going to find it difficult if we only continue to focus on rice. It also have a health implications to us. So how can we carry on this kinds of massive awareness that besides rice, we got other greens, other vegetables, we have potato greens, we got cabbage, we got tomatoes, we got pineapple, we got purples, we got all of this. How can we begin to tap into this whole ecosystems of food, this huge pool of food that we have in this country? So that could be one way, that could be one initiative to improve food access to the vulnerable population. So we can only focus on rice. Community gardenings. When I was also in school, this is something that we did in elementary and junior high school. Community gardening help a lot. So we will begin to spread awareness about community gardens in urban and rural communities, every household. At least people be able to plant something that they can eat behind their house, side their house, create a flower pot and plant food. All of these things will help to kind of provide and improve food access to all of us, not only the vulnerable populations of country. Market access, enhancing market linkages, for example, and improving transportation infrastructures to facilitate movement of food from surplus deficit regions, ensuring better access to food for remote and isolated communities, right? So how do we link the market? This is one of the challenges that Liberia faces right now. But I think it will begin to improve on some of these things. Obviously, we'll be providing access to food security. Food storage and preservation. Currently, Liberia doesn't have adequate electricity. So most of our food is strictly from the farm to the table or to the pot, right? Those that come from overseas, like the imported chicken and meat, those food are stored in supermarkets. And because there is no energy, these people use their individual money They spend a lot of money on energy, and they end up adding the prices or the cost of energy to the price of food. That kind of exacerbate the price of food on the market. So we need to improve on this. If we are to have access to food security or to have access to food, we need to look at the sphere of storage and preservation. Usually, during the rainy season in this country, we have oranges. The oranges, you have oranges almost everywhere. But sometimes it lasts for under 2 months. After 2 months, all the oranges are vanished. And most of it perish on the ground because there is no storage facility to store the orange. The same apply to plums. The same apply to pineapple and many other fruits for that matter. It only comes up for a very short period of time because there's no storage. We are not able to do preservation. Health and sanitation improvement is important. How do we encourage health and sanitation so that the people remain healthy to do their farms, so that they remain healthy to do the kind of activities that will help them to boost their food security? Then we need to do a massive awareness. Talking about the issue of defecations, for example, washing of hands, so that kids going to school, the population that need to make the farm should remain healthy, at all times. So the issue of health and sanitation is also important when we talk about improved food access for vulnerable population. We can do more collaborations and networking with both local and international organizations across the country to see as to which specific area they can focus some of their money and their energies in order to provide or to provide access to food to the entire population now vulnerable. Women empowerment is key. Women make up almost 65% of food productions in this country. Almost 65% of food production in this country is carried out by women, especially rural women in rural communities. That is what they do. They produce the peppers, they produce the beta bugs, they produce the edibles and the cassava. I mean, they do almost everything. So it will begin to empower. It will empower women to take seeds of the model, to take seeds of the model and to have the necessary equipment, and infrastructures that they so desire. This will also help to provide access, full access to rural population. Climate resilience, agriculture. Climate change is becoming an issue. Usually we used to have 2 seasons in Liberia, rainy and dry season. Rainy season started somewhere around May, April, and continue up to May, October. It was during these times our people plant their crops, right? And then during the dry season, they begin to harvest. But the weather is gradually changing. The weather is changing. I mean, during the rainy season, we're experiencing sun. During the dry season, we're experiencing rain. So then they bring about poor harvest. But how can we instigate a process of climate resilience? Climate resilience can be done in several ways. That's about bringing about innovations and creativities, ensuring that we resist, that we cope, that we go with the changing scenario of climate change, right? So climate resilience is important when it comes to agricultural practices that we have smallholder farmers cope with the impact of climate change, ensuring stable food production for their communities. Another thing we want to quickly look at is the agroecological constraints in Liberia, right? Not only Liberia, but we look at, when we talk about food security, we cannot also ignore the issue of agroecological constraints. It's obvious. Liberia agricultural productivity is significantly influenced by agroecological conditions. Understanding the local agroecological constraints is crucial for developing a sustainable strategies to improve food security. So one we want to look at, issue of climate change. Climate change, as I said earlier, is becoming evident, it's becoming visible. It's a problem, soil degradation. soil erosions and nutrition depletions and soil compactions are prevalent issues in Liberia. Right now, in my own agricultural center where we run our school, the issue of soil depletions is evident because at the FRC, where our students carry on their practical activities, you will realize that the soil in that particular location on about 50 acres of land is completely depleted. When you put any crops in there, it doesn't grow to your satisfaction. And this is happening consistently in many parts of the country. So that's one of the agroecological conditions we need to look at. Deforestation. Deforestation is affecting us greatly, right? If you look at deforestation, people are cutting down the forest, and there's no reforestation. I was speaking with one guy recently regarding deforestation, what the people are doing, replantings of the trees. He said to me, brother, it's more political. On the papers, the regulations, and the mandate is that as logging companies, kind of cut down the forest, they should be able to replant. And they should provide other means and sustenances for our people so that they don't tamper with the forest, but they will have means of sustenance. What are those replacements of the people's forest? If you tell the people not to cut down the forest for farming purposes, you tell them not to hunt meat, in order to have a reserve, natural reserve. If you tell them not to do much of a fishing in the rivers, there have to be an alternative means by which they can live by. And these logging companies are responsible. It should be part of their social corporate responsibility to ensure that these alternative means are properly put into place. That is not happening. It's a agroecological problem, right? Lack of water management system is also another serious issue, right? Limited access to water. During the drought now, we see that almost all of our rivers are getting dry. So as a result, the people do not have the infrastructures and ability to do any visible irrigation. If they will do visible irrigations, that also requires water. And that will depend on having the necessary equipment. But in the past, it was still, remember, during the drought season, it was difficult for Liberia waters to actually get dry. It was difficult, even in the lowland. But today, the lowlands are also getting dry during the drought. And during the rain, they are getting overlay flooded. It gives a lot of challenges to local farmers to just easily do their farm, right? And then lack of infrastructure. Lack of infrastructure, limited infrastructure, poor road network, and inadequate storage and processing facilities, inefficient transportation and distribution of agricultural products. The next thing we want to look at now is what are the local advantages for food security in Liberia? There are a couple of that. And this is where Liberia still stands. I was talking with somebody that Liberia is still a virgin land. When I say virgin land, it means that we still have a lot of privileges and opportunities that we haven't done yet, although other countries are doing it. So that even put us in a better position if and only if we want to engage into the agricultural industry. We want to improve our agricultural industry to enhance food security, not only in Liberia, but also in the sub-region. We have abundance of arable land. Liberia is blessed with vast areas of fertile land suitable for agriculture. We have approximately 4.5 million hectares of arable land still available. There's sufficient potential for increasing agricultural production and diversifying crops. The biodiversity of countries is still very rich. It offers opportunity for cultivating a wide variety of crops. Our biodiversity is good, including traditional and indigenous crops that are well adapted to local conditions. So diverse crops can enhance resilience to pests, diseases, and climate vulnerability. Then we talk about traditional farming practices. The local farmers have a long-standing traditional practices. Now, ask a question, for example. Before the 1950s, where did our people get food to eat in this country? Where? Even before the system. Speaking during this time, there were nothing like importations of food in this country. Our people have a local means of farming. And the food they gather from those farms were able to sustain them throughout the year, even with left over. But what have gone wrong? What have gone wrong? So we need to tap into existing local methodologies of farming and improve on it so that we'll be able to cope with the food demand. So that's also one advantage, right? That's one local advantage. And community-based farming is also very key. Liberia has a strong sense of community, and many farmers engage in community-based farming. I'm a local farmer as well. So in my rural communities, when I was coming out some years back, you know, we have something we call the pool system. Take, for instance, you have like 30 persons coming together to form a cooperative, call it a mini cooperative. It's part of the community-based farming. Dr. Dago is a member of that pool system. I'm a member of that pool system. Another person is a member of a group of 30. So we say, okay, today we will go to Dr. Dago's farm to cut the bush. And all 30 people move to Dr. Dago's farm and cut down the bush. The next day, the other 30 move to Livelihoods farm, cut the bush until we rotate around to go around, you know, to be able to reach to everybody's farm so that all the 30 of us can benefit, but in a more holistic, in a more collaborative form. So at the end of the day, at the end of the 30 rounds, you got 30 good farms. Is this something that we can also improve on? This one of the local advantages we have. Potential for agro-processing. Liberia is still virgin. Liberia is not currently producing anything. We are not currently producing anything. So the issue of production is still virgin. Can we venture into this area? You know, there are a lot of untapped potential for agro-processing industry. So we begin to think about value to agricultural products through processing. Farmers can access higher value markets and reduce post-harvest losses. How do we process our oranges, our plums? How do we purchase our pineapple, right? These are the crops we have, and these are crops that can perish just within 2 months' time. How do we harvest cassava and add value? Like what we do right now at the school, at my school, where we have our agriculture training. We have something we call super gari, right? This super gari goes through a lot of process. We take the cassava from the farm, we bring it out to a mini factory, we grind it, we stretch it, we patch it, we mix it up with other ingredients like coconuts, moringa oil, we put sugar, we put mix, and we mix it up, and then we package and we label. And trust me, this goes for almost 1.5 years. That's the validation, right? 1.5 years, and you are able to keep that in a way. And so it's a local food, fast food that students love. In fact, students eat that, myself also eat. So can we encourage these kinds of potentials? But the disappointment about it is that we are doing this manually. So if we have all of the necessary equipment to process, to pass, to press, and then to package, where we have all of the necessary equipment, and we have tractors to clear the land, other equipment, so that we make this valuable as Liberia framework, it could help a lot. Of course, we have supportive policies environment, right? We have supportive policy environment, like the Liberia Agriculture Sector investment plan that we just talked about. It's a plan in place, but how well, how effective is the plan is being implemented? If this plan can be strengthened, if it can meet the political will of national government and properly monitor, that could be a very good instrument to push us forward. fisheries, and agriculture. The Liberia coastal locations offers a huge opportunities for fisheries and agriculture. Sustainable fishing practices and development of agriculture can contribute to Liberia food security by providing a source of protein for our population. We got a wide coverage. Our coastline is one of the longest in the sub-region, extending as far as Grand Cape Mount County, coming towards Monserrado, moving towards Grand Bassa, eventually to Sando, and then to Maryland. Almost more than half of the Liberian soil is marked with a coastal line. So can we improve this to have an effective fishery industry in this country? It's an advantage for us. The next thing we quickly look at will be the current local initiatives for food security in Liberia. There are a couple of initiatives that are currently into place and working to some extent, right? You have the smallholder agricultural transformation and agribusiness revitalization project started under the Ministry of Agriculture with support from the World Bank. This project aims at increasing agricultural productivity and enhancing market linkages and supporting smallholder farmers in adopting to climate smart practices. The Sustainable Food Programs of the Ministry of Agriculture, funded by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, AFA, is also doing some work. The National School Feeding Program of WFP, that also doing some work in strategic schools and communities. The community-based food security and resilience program implemented by some non-governmental organizations and supported by the USAID, the livelihood improvement for women and youth in agriculture is also in place. So these are some of the local initiatives. And we look at the past successes and failures in addressing food security challenges in Liberia. There have been some successes. There have also been some failure due to challenges, and there are implications to that. So the agricultural value chain development projects, for example, this project were implemented by the Ministry of Education, let's say agriculture some years back, with support from the African Development Bank. And it helps to enhance value chain of key agricultural commodities, like what I said, rice. We used to have the local rice on the market. Well, packaged and labeled, right? Vegetables. We are currently doing cassava. We refer to that as super gari. We produce it manually. When we have the necessary equipment, we can do better. We can do better than this. If the government try to see these opportunities and support it, we can do better. So this project was working in that direction, right? The project succeeded because it provided some markets. It was able to link some markets. People living from the hinterland coming to with this produce, because a lot of people also want to eat country rice, right? So it provided markets, they brought their produce and placed it into various supermarkets for people to buy, that was a plus. That was a plus. And what it also did is that it resulted in increased income for farmers and enhanced food availability in target communities. But there were challenges, of course. One of the main challenges that faced this project was the inadequate infrastructure, as we just said, particularly in the rural areas. So limited access to food roads continue to be a major hurdles for Liberian farmers, for the Liberian agriculture sector. Storage facilities also hamper the efficient movement of agricultural produce, right? Leading to significant losses and reduced market access for farmers. Additionally, fluctuations in global commodity prices and market demand affected the profitability of the farmers, especially those relying on the single crops. What's the implications of this? That the structure of agricultural value chain, it underscores the importance of holistic approach to food security. Addressing infrastructure gaps, such as road and shortage and storage facilities, is it aims, is essential in enhancing, in ensuring the efficient functioning of the agricultural value chains in Liberia. Moreover, diversifications of crops, not only relying on one crops, we need to diversify our crops and raise enough awareness around this. And the next one is the Emergency Food Assistance Program. This also succeeded because it was done during the heat of the Civil War and even during the crisis here, even that of Ebola and that of COVID-19. During this period of acute food insecurity, Liberia implemented emergency assistance program to provide relief to vulnerable populations. I was also part of that during the Ebola crisis. I remember very well my organization distributed rice with support from our partners in Canada. We distributed rice to places, to vulnerable populations that could not easily afford. We did the same also during the COVID-19. I remember somewhere around 2002, during the heat of the Civil War, through my church, the Lutheran Welfare Federation was supplying food, and I was opportune to be on that committee. So we distributed rice across the country to a vulnerable population, especially internally displaced refugees, into those places where they were. So we had similar programs on the emergency food assistance program. The challenge with the emergency food assistance program is that while emergency food assistance programs, while have been vital in addressing short-term crises, they have not fully addressed the underlying causes of food security. That's an emergency. You are providing food to someone to survive just for today and tomorrow, or for a short period of time of crisis. When the crisis is over, you no longer provide the food. Eventually, these people go back. But I think we begin to mix up why we are even giving emergency food. We should also be educating them how to produce, engaging into backyard garden, engaging into community gardens, and the rest of that. So what is the implications of emergency food assistance program? It remains critical for responding to acute food crisis. However, to achieve a lasting food security, effort must go beyond immediate relief and focus on building the resilience of community. This includes investment in agriculture, nutrition, education, and social protection. Thank you ever so much.